Hey, good afternoon, everyone. We are starting the meeting. This is the Planning and Zoning Board meeting for today, Wednesday, September 3rd. Can we have a roll call?
Sure. Mark Baum,
Here.
Dave Matthews,
Here.
Hank Paulsky,
Here.
Dan Waleski,
Here.
Juan Cotton. You have a quorum.
Great. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, any additions, deletions, or reordering of the agenda?
There are none.
No. Excellent. Okay. Approval of minutes for the August 6th meeting.
And then I need to approve the minutes from August 6th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously passes. Okay, we've got a few cases tonight. The proof of publication, everything's good. I guess we've got swearing in of staff and applicants.
Okay.
If you plan to give testimony this evening, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say yes.
Turn your camera on, unmute, and also swear in.
Real quick, just please raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So I see 4 proof of publications. We have no withdrawals or postponements for this meeting. Any board disclosure?
My test.
Make sure you're using your microphone.
Okay, so no unfinished business. So moving on to new business, item A, ordinance 2025-12. Is this one that needs to be officially read?
I'll do it just in case. You just give myself a bad mic. Bear with me.
That was a long one. I figured that you do it.
Right. All right, ordinance 2025-12, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending the official zoning map by approving the amendment to a previously approved mixed-use urban plan development district, residential only, located at the northwest corner of South Dixie Highway and 9th Avenue South to construct 2 6-story multifamily buildings containing a total of 182 dwelling units, as more particularly described in Exhibit A, located within the Transit-Oriented Development East (TODE) zoning district, with the future land use designation of Transit-Oriented Development (TOD), subject to specific development standards set forth in Exhibit B and conditions of approval set forth in Exhibit C, approving amendments to a conditional use permit and a major site plan, approving amendments to height, density, and intensity bonus incentives to the city's Sustainable Bonus Incentive Program, transfer of development rights program, and affordable workforce housing program, providing for severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Okay. Do we have a presentation from staff?
Sure.
Excellent.
All right, so for the record, this is Annie Greening, Principal Planner for the City of Lake Worth Beach. So like we just heard, this is a major plan development amendment to the Madison Terrace planned development. So as you'll all recall, a few months back, we came to you with the replat that they were doing to incorporate the final piece of the puzzle that they got. So this is the plan development to address that. So we're changing the total site area, the boundaries of this PD, As a result of them getting more land area, they are also able to increase the number of dwelling units that they're building. And so with that, there's some associated alterations to the site plan, their building plans, and some additional FAR and some increased building height. So we've got our existing conditions. So this is the site. They have that last former single family home along South H Street. So they have a little bit more of a regular shape now. So that original plan development, future land use map amendment, rezoning, and right-of-way abandonments were approved back in September of 2023. This was originally a 176 unit age-restricted senior apartment development. The City Commission did approve multiple waivers in that original approval, including a waiver of the TDR fees, waiver of the minimum parking requirements with a rate of approximately 0.7 parking spaces provided per unit, as well as some landscape-related waivers, including reduction in terminal landscape island width, elimination of required landscape strips between rows of parking, and reduction of a landscape buffer adjacent to 822 South H Street. That one's no longer applicable as they now own 822 South H Street. They did also have a site plan amendment that was approved administratively in December 2024. And then again, we had that replat that was approved by the City Commission in June of this year, bringing the 6 parcels into 2 new parcels following their phase lines. So we've got our updated site plan. So they are going from that previous approval of 176 dwelling units to 182 dwelling units. So there's 6 additional units. All of those are 1-bedroom units. It's still 2 mid-rise 6-story residential buildings. They are still providing various amenity rooms for their residents, including activity rooms, arts and crafts rooms, game rooms, and billiards rooms in each building. The site overall does have that same public open space towards the front. They did also determine with the electric utilities team and planning and zoning locations for their transformers and generator. They do still have their Palm Tran pickup drop-off area. And then in terms of parking, so like I said, previously they got a waiver from the City Commission to reduce the overall parking requirement. So as it stands with their current calculations of how many dwelling units they're proposing, they would typically need 202 spaces with the 25% affordable workforce housing parking reduction. With the previously approved rate of 0.7 spaces per unit, they would need 128. They are proposing to provide 129 spaces. Also of note with this is that acquiring 822 South H Street has enabled them to redesign their parking areas so that they're providing a greater number of standard parking spaces as compared to compact or alternate bike and motorcycle spaces than they were able to previously. We've got our landscape plan. So like always, they're providing perimeter landscaping and shade trees. Generally, the landscape plan is consistent. Staff has added a few conditions of approval. There's a couple areas along the northern/northwest portion of the property and along the southern property line where we're missing some perimeter trees, but staff has included those as conditions of approval, and the applicant is working on some small trees that would work well there without any utility conflicts. So we'll go through some architectural renderings real quick. This is a view of both buildings as proposed from South Dixie Highway. In general, the architectural design and style has not changed much from the previous approval. This is still, it's along the major thoroughfare design guide, or major thoroughfares. So it's subject to the major thoroughfare design guidelines. They're contemporary in design with some Art Deco detailing. So this is a view looking sort of north-northwest on South Dixie Highway. You can see some of the parking beneath the buildings on the lower left-hand side. And this is a view looking generally eastward. You can see the backs of the residential buildings. And again, that surface parking beneath it. So then getting through the elevations, this is the front elevation. This is the south side elevation of the buildings, the north side elevation, and the rear. Previous conditions of approval from the original plan development do require installation of murals on the rear facade of each of the buildings to help offset the lack of architectural features that are on the rear. So for any plan development, and in this case, a plan development amendment, we do both look at the plan development section of the code as well as the base zoning district. So we are able to provide additional waivers to land development regulations as part of incentives for plan developments. The applicants are requesting that 2 of the previously approved waivers be continued as part of this amendment. And that is the parking rate waiver and the transfer of development rights fee waiver. They are also continuing to propose to use incentives through the plan development provisions, sustainable bonus, transfer development rights, and affordable workforce housing program for increased density, intensity, and height. So this zoning table was in your staff reports. Generally, they comply with all of the requirements. You can see in the zoning table that there is the overall increase in site area, the overall increase in total dwelling units, as well as some bumps in total square footage and height. So in terms of incentives, the general concept of what they're requesting for the incentives is the same. So in our comp plan, a mixed-use urban plan development can obtain a 25% bonus on density, FAR, and height over the baseline outlined in Table 1 of the comp plan. So through SBIP, they're able to get bonus height up to 56.25 feet, density of 75 units per acre, so that's 66 bonus units, and FAR of 1.7. So because the number of units and related to that, the total square footage has increased, the area that is applicable to that sustainable bonus has increased. So that's where we're getting these calculations of some extra square footage and some extra sustainable bonus fees. So our total sustainable bonus fee is a bit over $26,000. Half of that, as always, is required to be paid to the city, and the other half is met through qualifying features or in lieu payment. In this case, the applicants are providing 100% affordable housing across the development. And affordable housing is a qualifying feature. So because they're providing above and beyond what's required by minimum city standards, that is eligible to be used for sustainable bonus. So they calculated out using city values, the value of the 6 additional income restricted units that they're providing and estimated that at $274,000. So well above what they need for that in lieu. Transfer of development rights is available for any planned development that has already incorporated all of the density, height, and intensity bonuses available through SBIP. So they are requesting 10 extra units per acre of density, as well as 1 bonus story, 15 feet maximum in height. So that lets them go up to a little bit over 71 feet. They are requesting a height of 68 feet. That's a couple feet above where they were previously approved. The TDR value is almost $13,000. They are requesting that the City Commission continue to waive their TDR fees. And finally, affordable workforce housing. So our program requires that all units acquired through the 15% affordable workforce density be income restricted, as well as 15% of the total number of units gained through utilization of any other city incentive programs. So in this case, the units that they gained through the increased area from TDR and sustainable bonus, 15% of those also have to be income restricted. But again, 100% of this development is going to be income restricted. They are using federal low income housing tax credits to or tax financing to finance this. So they will have to income restrict all of the units for a period of at least 50 years, and the average rental rate of the units in the property can't exceed 60% of the area median income. So staff finds that as conditioned, the request is consistent with our comp plan, our strategic plan, our design guidelines, and all applicable portions of the LDRs. A multifamily use like this is anticipated and encouraged in this zoning district. And we do find that the development as amended will continue to be complementary to the adjacent residential and commercial properties. So we are recommending approval with conditions. We don't have too many conditions because most of them we are just referring back to the original approval. We don't need to restate those conditions. So planning and zoning just has some additional requirements about recording the amendment ordinance with the clerk of court so that all of the conditions will continue to be on record for future purchasers, as well as, and I apologize, I didn't mention this earlier, the transformers, because they are near the front of the property, near a public open space, we are conditioning that in addition to landscape screening where feasible, they'll also have a decorative wrapping to help mitigate that visual impact. We have the landscape conditions about adding those few trees, and then building has mostly an advisory condition about revising some permit plans to be corrected to match the PD. So we have our potential motions here, and then if you have any questions for the applicants, they are also online tonight.
And did the applicant, I don't know if the board has any questions, but did the applicant want to make any kind of a presentation, or they're happy with staff presentation?
No, I'm extremely happy with the presentation. I want to say thank you to Annie. She's working through a lot of issues with us, this particular project. It's been a complicated project. So thank you, Annie, and the rest of the staff, and of course, the Planning and Zoning Board, City Commission, and the CRA. Everybody's been extremely supportive of this project, and as you can see, we're moving along, and phase 2 should start in a few months. We're happy to have the plat behind us. So, we just appreciate all the support, and if you have any questions, I'm here for you. Thank you very much.
Just one.
Yeah, let's do board questions, and then we'll do public comment and motions.
Yeah, so just my question to the applicant, if you're okay with all of the conditions that were listed.
Yes, we're okay with the conditions, certainly. Yeah.
Any other questions from the board members before we do public comment? Okay, do we have some public comment on this agenda item? Okay, I don't see any public comment, and nothing was received by email. Okay. Yeah, I think we've gone through a few times, so yeah.
I'd be willing to make a motion on this if it's agreeable with the board. I move to recommend approval with conditions of ordinance 2025-12, commonly referred to as the Madison Terrace Plan Development Amendment, based upon the competent and substantial evidence provided in the staff report and in the testimony at the public hearing.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Okay, new business item B. Ordinance 2025-13, consideration of a privately initiated ordinance amending Chapter 23, Article 4, Section 23.4-13, C5, single destination retail uses, including standalone retail and single destination commercial uses. Take it away.
All right. So, yeah, unlike a lot of the LDR amendments that we have come before you guys, this is a privately initiated amendment that is amending just one section of the code. So we had some of the background in your staff report, but basically we had a business apply for a zoning letter. That zoning letter and subsequent meetings with the applicant, including with the Director of Community Sustainability, confirmed that the best fit use that we have for this business, Precious Metals Reclaiming Service South, is a single destination commercial use. As our code is written currently, they would not meet the minimum site area requirements, or the minimum site width, I believe. And so in discussions with them, the only way to resolve that sort of issue would generally be amending the LDRs. It would not be really applicable for a variance because it would be essentially a variance to a use, which our code does not allow for. So we discussed with them amending the minimum site area and lot width. And a lot of the reason for that is because these sorts of uses were originally envisioned back when we were doing the big code overhaul in 2013. We were envisioning that a lot of these sites would be consolidated into larger sites for these sorts of single destination uses. We're now many years down the road from that, and in a lot of the city that has just not happened. So, you know, working on a privately initiated amendment for the site area and lot width was something that staff was open to working with, and, you know, making these sorts of uses available to some other sites in the city. The applicant ended up submitting some stuff beyond what we had originally discussed, which is why what we had presented to you in the staff report and what we'll go through tonight is sort of a partial support with amendments to what the applicant is proposing. So they're proposing amendments to 6 portions of this part of the code. So like we talked about, minimum site area, the applicant proposed to reduce it from 10,000 square feet to 6,500 square feet, specifically in the TOD zoning districts. Staff proposes to do that same reduction, but across all zoning districts that currently allow this sort of use, not singling out the TOD districts in general. That's a theme that you'll see throughout staff's recommendations here. Same thing for minimum lot width. Go from 100 feet to 50 feet, but instead of just TOD, do it in all zoning districts. And then major thoroughfares, the applicant proposed to exempt sites in TOD zoning districts from the requirement for the site to front a major thoroughfare. Staff instead is proposing that we exempt low intensity, so that's use area under 2,500 square feet, single destination uses from the requirement to front a major thoroughfare. This would continue to concentrate larger single destination retail uses, you know, let's think like a big box store or something, along our major commercial thoroughfares in the city where they belong, but allow the smallest of these uses to be outside of those major thoroughfares. So we thought that that made more of a rational nexus for that reason for exemption there. The parts of the amendments that staff are not supporting are the amendments to landscaping, glazing, and display window requirements. As submitted, the applicant's proposed amendments to landscaping would exempt sites in the TOD zoning districts from perimeter and site-wide landscape requirements. That is not something that the city is willing to just exempt certain zoning districts from landscape. In terms of glazing, the applicant proposes to exempt sites in TOD zoning districts from the requirement for 25% clear glazing along frontages and clearly identifiable entrances. So this is something that gets into, again, major thoroughfares. So our major thoroughfare design guidelines also call for 25% clear glazing along building frontages. This is important for the pedestrian environment and feeling. And it's not something that staff is comfortable exempting a particular zoning district from that requirement. And then display windows, again, the applicant is proposing to exempt sites in TOD zoning districts from the requirement for engaging vignettes in display windows. This sort of requirement for engaging vignettes for pedestrian purposes is not something that's only found in this portion of the code. It's scattered throughout the code anywhere that we're looking for display windows to have you know, something that speaks to the pedestrian. It also talks about, you know, not having them covered up. Don't, you know, paper over your display windows. It doesn't say that these businesses have to have display windows, but where they do occur, we have standards for them. So again, staff is not proposing any changes to our current code. So our recommendation is that you all recommend, because again, this is as an ordinance, this is something that you're making a recommendation to the city commission. We're recommending that you recommend the city commission adopt this ordinance only with staff supported amendments to the site area requirement, lot width requirement, and major thoroughfare requirement. The applicants are here tonight as well. If you have questions and discussion for them.
Before we get to the applicant, can you clarify, I understand when I read the staff recommendation, the site area minimum lot width, the major thoroughfare requirement specifically, because I know some of these apply to that and you're not recommending, this references subsection B1, B2, and B7.
Mhm.
Can you clarify what part of the major thoroughfare requirement that is that you're recommending?
Sorry, yeah, so that major thoroughfare requirement, so right now, as the code is written, single destination retail and commercial uses must have frontage along a major thoroughfare. So that's where we are considering, basically, we saw the submittal from the applicant, we're like, this proposal isn't really going to work for us, but it did prompt us to consider, is there an area where it would be appropriate to not require that these sorts of businesses front a major thoroughfare? So that's where we're looking to say, or proposing that instead establishments with that use area under 2,500 square feet would not have to front a major thoroughfare.
And that would be that subsection,
7,
that's B7.
yes,
Okay. And then B1 and B2 are,
the site area and the lot width.
okay, perfect. Okay. Okay. Any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? Okay, is the applicant here and you'd like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Max Lohman. I represent PMRS. Thank you for giving us the time to have you all consider this evening. Everything Ms. Greening said, I agree with. We talked about it, and just so you guys understand, some of the proposals that we originally presented was not an attempt to be arbitrary and capricious and limited to the TOD. Both myself and my client misunderstood some of our communications, and I thought that I didn't realize that they were willing to make these changes citywide, which quite frankly, I think is a smarter idea than limiting to the TOD anyway. And it was the same thing with the thoroughfare, the major thoroughfare. It was a misunderstanding of the location of our property was actually on a major thoroughfare. So otherwise we wouldn't have suggested that either. The only thing that, and I had talked to Ms. Greening about this earlier and had since revised our request and sent it to him, but she didn't be able to have it quick enough to get it before you tonight. Is the only other thing was the landscaping. We're not looking to get out of the landscaping. We completely understand what staff is supporting, and we agree with it, which is the site area, the minimum lot width. And as far as the landscaping, and we're not asking for any of the rest of it anymore. The only other thing we are in discussions with staff about is potentially having the city council delegate authority to the community sustainability director with the ability to have some flexibility with the 5-foot perimeter landscaping, not the other landscaping requirements, but the 5-foot perimeter. You have a lot of lots in the TOD. I'm not as familiar with some of your other lots, but a lot of those buildings in the TOD East, particularly, those are very old lots. They're non-conforming buildings, and the buildings are built almost right to the property lines. And so in many cases, there's no way for them to put in a 5-foot perimeter landscaping. Some of those buildings actually touch each other. So we had discussions about that. I know that's not before you at the moment, but I just wanted to let you know that we're not, like I said, we're not trying to get out of the whole landscaping thing. It's just we weren't aware of their willingness to consider that at the time.
Okay, so you think that as staff is recommending approval, that those conditions and that limited approval meets the requirements that you guys have?
A request, yes, sir. I think it will be fine.
Property.
And we could continue to work with staff on potentially making a revision to the landscaping requirement about the perimeter buffer if they're willing to do that.
Right. And if staff would, just for the board and for myself, could you clarify for a single destination use what exactly that means? And I know it doesn't have to be exact. Take away the exact, just what that means in general.
I might, if you guys would be open to it, just pull up the definitions, because it is kind of it's a simple but complicatedly simple concept.
If I understand it, my paraphrasing would be it's a place that you're going to specifically because you have a need
Yeah.
for that place. It's not the sort of place you walk by and are like, oh, let me walk in here and check
It's
this
not a
place out.
Walmart.
It's
Yes, sir.
it's a thing that you would, they're kind of regional, so you're driving to it, parking, using it. It doesn't have as much
Mhm.
interaction with the rest of the neighborhood, but it is, it's a need and it provides a service to the community.
Generally, yes. It can include something, like a quote unquote big box store. But I mean, realistically, there's so few places in Lake Worth Beach that could fit a Walmart that's generally not what we're getting to. So here we go. So we've got single destination commercial. So a wide array of commercial activity and services generally also contains a combination of uses. So they give some examples here. So an auction room, a bait shop, medical and dental supply sales, taxidermists. So it's a big net sometimes. And then single destination retail is retail specific with a wide array of retail items. So it could be something like a convenience store or a grocery store is kind of, I'd say, one of the more common single destination retail uses that we see. That single destination retail can get bumped to a single destination commercial when you start including something like a money business service or optical services. If you've got your, convenience store with a pharmacy, maybe you're getting to single destination commercial.
Okay. I had that backwards. So it's actually where multiple uses are kind of within it. So I had it completely backwards. Thank you for clarifying. Any other questions from the board for the applicant or staff before we take public comment?
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much. Okay, public comment on this agenda item.
What about the parking? Would you guys?
If you want to, you have to come up and say your name and address for the record, and then go ahead and ask the question. We're not really allowed to do it back and forth. It's more a comment on if you support or things like that.
There you go.
There we go. Leon Dixon. I'm at 1911 Notre Dame Drive. The only comment is if you're going to reduce the lot size, would you consider reducing the parking requirement as well?
So the parking is typically tied to the square footage of the building,
Right.
not so much. So the issue is, you have a smaller lot, you're building a smaller building, you're putting smaller parking, everything kind of scales.
Okay.
But when we have minimum lot sizes under the code, they're not even allowed to apply for a smaller building if we have a minimum lot size. So, and the idea is you don't want them kind of squeezed in. You wanted them to aggregate some sites. And I generally understand and support this. It gives some flexibility to the code. And thank you for the comment, Chairman. Okay, I guess my comments, I think this is a very reasonable modification of the code. I think some of these square footage numbers, we have high things, we have small lots in the city. It makes sense to allow these where it's appropriate. And I think the city's done a good job at limiting the scope of
I
this.
just had just quickly to the staff, that ordinance 2025-13, is that a newly published ordinance or is that,
That would be the ordinance number of this ordinance.
of this particular ordinance
Yeah.
that is not related to anything else then, right?
No, that's this privately initiated amendment.
Thank you.
Just from a staff perspective, we'll be carrying this forward to HRPB next week and then City Commission. If we could get a little board direction on the landscape item, basically where the board stands on kind of doing somewhere between what the applicant originally proposed and keeping it just as it is, how the board feels about doing something in the realm of like perimeter landscaping insofar as feasible, just so that we can kind of give that clear board direction to the City Commission when we get to that point.
I'll take a shot. My general philosophy on a lot of this is that I like for staff to be empowered to make reasonable and rational decisions. And if that's what the commission would be enabling you to do, then I'm in favor of it. And I definitely see the applicant's point that there are a lot of, if you're developing some of these small lots, putting in a 5-foot landscaping buffer between two uses that are not dissimilar. You have two fairly similar uses, but both of them are putting in 5-foot landscaping. So you have 10 foot of landscaping. It doesn't really it's not what I envision a lot when you're looking at transit-oriented development and kind of that high-intensity frontage. So I think having the flexibility. Now, do I think that if they don't do it in the perimeter buffer, that they should do landscaping somewhere else? I kind of do. I kind of think that the overall area should be preserved. You shouldn't just eliminate it. But, you know, if they're saying, hey, we're not going to put a buffer on this side because it's just buffering our parking lot from their parking lot, but we're going to put some more landscaping in this back corner where you can create a nice area where we're going to enhance the visual of the frontage. I think staff having the discretion to review and approve that makes total sense without having to seek waivers and things like that. I don't think you need to vote on that one particularly, but it sounds like we've got consensus that the board agrees that, yeah, just that would come back to us in any case that we would review if it was a modification to the code. Because you, at some point, that would have to come back as either staff initiated or, you know, that would still be a change to the code. Or are you considering adding it into this when you bring it to the commission?
I think I was looking more for direction for any, and it's sort of like, you know, when you all provide recommendations on our like summer round LDRs and you're like, oh, well, what if we, you know, edit this or include this? I was looking more in that realm just because these applicants are, you know, looking to move forward with their use approval if this moves past the city commission. So I figured easiest to do it at this point if that's the direction that the board is going in response to the discussion that the applicant had tonight.
I'm comfortable with that. I mean, I think it makes sense for staff to be able to, so we're not saying you don't have to do it. We're just saying staff has the discretion to provide relief from that particular thing if it makes sense, but we're not eliminating. They would still, if you all looked at it and said, no, you should put in the buffer, it's not giving them permission not to do it. It's just giving staff permission to provide relief if it doesn't make sense in a particular case. That's what's being requested, right?
Yes, to my knowledge, yes.
Okay. And is there any, I know with code, you want code to be black and white, but I think there are other areas where there are either an administrative waiver or however that would be handled. I don't know. That's where it gets a little bit detailed whether they need, because it's still part of the code to have the buffer, but you're allowing for a process where that could be.
And that's something that staff would be doing kind of between PZB, HRPB, and bringing it to city commission is working out that amended language, whether that's just saying insofar as feasible or directing it to the administrative adjustment section or wherever we come up with that's the best fit for that, if that's the direction the board is comfortable going in.
Do we have a motion? I'm not allowed to make a motion. If I'm the chair, I can't make a motion. So you guys got to handle it.
I'll do it. I move to recommend to the city commission to adopt the staff revised LDR text amendments included in the proposed ordinance 2025-13.
A second.
Is your motion with the additional change for the landscaping?
With the additional change on the landscaping.
Becker, agree?
How was it? How did you word the landscaping again? Additional, how did you state that for the record?
That's staff's
With-
discretion.
Yeah, amendments for perimeter landscaping insofar as feasible or
I think the goal is to get, put language into the ordinance regarding staff's ability to, provide some flexibility on the landscaping regulations. And so we're not sure exactly what that looks like or where that will go at this point, but if you're good with that direction, then we will work out those details before this makes it to the commission.
I'm in favor of that.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, so we have a motion and a
With
second.
that, yeah, but with that in line, I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay.
No.
No, I think I can second, but I can't make a motion. But I can't make it. Yeah. Okay, so item C, PZB project number 25-015-0005. Consideration of two variance requests for 1708 North Lakeside Drive to encroach into the side setback and to exceed the maximum wall height of the side setback. The subject site is zoned single-family residential and has a future land use designation of single-family residential.
Hi, my name is Karina Maldonado. I'm the senior community planner. So we are here to discuss 1708 North Lakeside Drive, a variance request. And here's the general location of the property. It is located between North Lakeside Drive and an intercoastal waterway. Here's a general background of this property. This past February, they received a building permit to construct a new single-family home on a vacant lot. And in March, they provided the city a form board survey, which depicted the wrong setback, but was not noticed by the applicant or the city. The project has had numerous inspections since. And by the summer, the contractor reached out to planning and zoning to let us know that the building was constructed at the wrong setback, to which they applied for a variance at the direction of staff. So there are two variance requests. One is for the side setbacks. The second is for the maximum wall height at side setback. So the site has a general side setback requirement of 10% of the lot width, which would require a 9-foot setback, a 9-foot side setback. And a portion of the southeast side of the structure has a minimum setback requirement of 10 feet 4 inches because it has a wall height of 23 feet 4 inches. So there's a greater setback requirement when a wall exceeds a certain height. So here's a survey of the property. I put little notes here. So the blue is the area of the property that requires a 9-foot setback. The green portion is the area of the structure that requires a 10-foot 4-inch setback. And this form board survey shows that most of the side setback was built at 8 feet. So staff's zoning analysis criteria 1 is based on special circumstances or conditions that exist and are peculiar to the land or building. So although the structure was newly constructed with an incorrect side setback and was not identified during city inspections, it does remain the builder's responsibility to ensure that the construction complies with the city approved and stamped plans. Deviation from the required setback and maximum wall height at side setback is a direct result of the applicant's actions, and there are no unique hardship related to the physical characteristics of the property. And there hasn't been any special physical characteristics that have been demonstrated, so it doesn't meet the first criteria, variance criteria. So criteria 2 and 3 considers whether the strict application of the LDRs would result in a denial of all reasonable use of the property. In this case, the property is developed as a single-family home, which is permitted and is a reasonable use within the zoning district. So compliance with the required side setback and maximum wall height at side setback would not prevent the proposed residential use of the property and does not meet these two criteria either. So on the staff analysis for criteria 4 has found that the granting of the variance request would likely not be unduly injurious or detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood or public welfare. And therefore we found that it does meet this criteria. So in conclusion, The applicant has not established by competent and substantial evidence that the requested variances satisfy the full scope of the four criterias, including hardship be established related to the circumstances of the property, and that the strict applications of the LDRs would deprive the property owners of reasonable use of land. And therefore, staff is recommending that Planning and Zoning Board not approve the proposed variance request. As of today, we have not received any comments in support or opposition of the approval. We have two motions. Staff recommends disapproval, but if you do recommend approval, we have added conditions of approval to consider. Mainly that this variance would be specific to the south side setback and the maximum wall height. And it's project specific, where if anything were to be altered, if the structure were to be destroyed, it would be built into compliance. And because they have a approved building permit, if you were to approve it, we would require a revision for building permit. So here are some photos that the applicant provided. One is from the front facing the east side, and one from the rear of the property facing west. Here's the approved site plan that the city approved. It's hard to see, but it showed a 10.5-foot setback on the south side. And here's the survey again. And that completes my presentation. And the applicant is here too, if you have any questions from them.
Can you leave it on the picture that shows the building, what's already been built?
That one?
Yeah, you can leave it there during discussion.
Does it board have any questions for staff before we ask if the applicant wants to address this? Or let's
Not from staff.
okay. So let's hear from the applicant. I'm sure they want to address this.
I'm Casey Moreau, the permit coordinator for,
It's it's off.
There's a red light on the top when it's on. There you go. Now it's on.
Oh, okay. I'm the permit coordinator for Streamline Building and Development, and this is the GC Sudan. To explain how this happened, we submitted plans, the site plan depicting a 10-foot, 6-inch side setback, along with a vacant lot survey for our permit submittal package. We had a proposed survey done which showed the 8-foot side setback, but the permit was issued without any request to see it. Construction began on the house following the proposed survey, and a form board survey was done prior to the slab inspection, which also reflected the 8-foot side setback. This passed inspection with a city inspector, along with all other inspections. The form board survey is also part of the Lake Worth file, which we confirmed with a records request. The discrepancy between the two surveys and the site plan was noticed by Sudan in early June. We reached out to Rosie in the planning department immediately, asking for advice on the process to obtain a variance. We accepted the first staff meeting date available, which was June 25th. At the meeting, Sudan and myself met with Rosie and Karina, who informed us that they don't look at surveys during plan review except only to see property lines, and that the first available PZB meeting date would not be until September. We applied for the variance the following week on July 3rd, and I just wanted to make these dates known because they're not matching up to the staff report exactly, and I want it to be clear that we've been addressing this as quickly as we can with the city. We do believe we should be granted this variance due to the failure of the city inspector to complete the form board inspection properly. Though we admit that the mistake of the proposed survey is ours, we disagree with the staff report that the city holds no responsibility, as the sole purpose of an inspector is to ensure that the work performed matches the approved plans. We wish that the error had not happened and that the city had caught this mistake prior to the vertical erection of the home. Additionally, it was of the honesty of the GC alone who caught and came forward with this mistake. It's unclear if the city would have otherwise caught it at this point. Finally, since coming forward to the city, the project has not received a stop work order, nor have we been advised not to continue the work, allowing us to sink an additional 3 months and $500,000 into the home, all the while passing inspections from city inspector on what they now know to be a non-conforming structure. At this stage, the exterior of the house, as you can see, is fully constructed. The roof is done. The gutters are even installed now since that picture. Inside, tiles in, drywall's up, and cabinets are scheduled for next week. We have met with the only potentially affected person, who is the adjacent neighbor to the south, who personally walked the home and signed a consent letter, which we have with us here tonight, if you guys would like to see that. The property owner of 1708 North Lakeside is also willing to sign an affidavit stating that no further encroachment would be proposed and future improvements. And if the home were demolished, then the variance would no longer be valid. Please grant us this variance, as we believe we do meet the criteria for being a special circumstance and are only asking for what has already been done to be legalized. To have to undo this mistake would force almost the complete demolition of the home, as the structural beams, trusses, balconies, electric, plumbing, and mechanical would have to be redesigned and rebuilt in order to shave down the house, costing upwards of $400,000 to $500,000 and another 4 to 6 months of construction time. Even though Streamline is a luxury home builder, it's a local small business based out of North Palm with 5 employees. The property owner of 1708 North Lakeside is the GC's own brother. Having to undo this mistake will have enormous consequences, both financially and personally. Thank you.
Quick question. So you, in your timeline, you mentioned there was something, so your approved site plan that shows the setbacks that the city would have stamped as approved, that shows a site plan.
Right.
What did that show for setbacks?
That shows 10'6" on the rear, and then on the front too.
And then you said something about a revised survey, not the form board survey, but something else prior to the form board.
We had a proposed survey, which we expected it to be part of the process. Most municipalities want.
Survey. Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot survey that would have shown basically your surveyor just took the lot survey and put the building on there.
Yeah, they put a
And at that
proposed
point, they put
structure
it in the wrong location. I'm assuming you meant it to be a 10'6". This was an accident, right? You meant it to be.
Yeah.
So at that point, the surveyor put it in the wrong spot and nobody caught that. And so when the surveyor came out there and they staked the foundation, they staked it per the plan that they had done, and you built to their stakes and didn't realize it until much later in the process. Is that correct? Okay.
That is correct.
I just want to understand that process. So I don't know from a legal perspective. I know, I'm a general contractor. We carry insurance for a lot of reasons, and I've seen some really bad things where people have had to tear down buildings. I haven't been a part of any of that. I don't really, I don't think that's a good outcome. But at the same time, in terms of arguing liability, I'm not going to in any way get into that because that's not our business here. That's not something.
Back to the survey. Was that a sign and seal survey by a registered surveyor?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, but so overall in the process, like I don't really, when you're doing a building, typically you're submitting a survey that shows the lot, and then you're submitting a site plan that shows how the building's going to go in there. You then sometimes you will go and have the surveyor just take that drawing that the architect made and copy and paste it onto their drawing. But when they did that, they put it in the wrong spot. That's not typically a document that is, in my experience, most of the time I never even provide that to the building department. It's not something that's requested, not something that's provided on single family homes. Sometimes on larger stuff it is, but so saying that the city is responsible for it is, at that point, doesn't make sense. The next part of it is the form board survey. So as a general contractor, when you put in your actual the boards, literally they call it a form board because that's what it is. There's wooden boards in, you're about to pour your concrete in there. Before you pour your concrete, the surveyor comes out and checks it. Well, because the surveyor had provided a survey to the builder that showed the setbacks wrong, that's the document they were using to quality control the form boards. So they didn't, normally the surveyor at that point would have said, hey, your form boards are in the wrong place. But they didn't, because the drawing that they had previously was wrong. So now it's compounding. And again, the inspector does come out, they do, an inspection on it. Whether there's liability there or not, I don't really know, but I just don't. But typically it is always the contractor's responsibility first to ensure that, to do their own QC there. And I don't quite agree that it's the building department's responsibility to make sure that you're building per plans. They're looking at code issues, like, because sometimes you'll have a building that has, interior finishes and they're not responsible that it's per plan. That's a contract issue between the builder and the buyer on a lot of things. But on this one, I'm just not really sure. In general, it's, I don't think that as a board, we really should even be diving into any liability issues, because that's not something that we have any say so. What we have a say so is whether or not the variance should be approved. it definitely is a hardship. I mean, and again, the other thing that kind of is, I hear you saying it and it makes sense, but I would advise you in the future, when you find one of these things, whether the building department tells you to stop or not, stop.
Well, we
if
hope
you-
to not have this issue again in the
I know.
future.
When you find out that there's a major issue with your building, then you stop and you work with them to get clarification and get approval. But just moving forward and saying that we continued for 3 months worth of work doesn't all of a sudden make them more responsible for it, because they're hoping that you get this well, but it's your responsibility. Like if I were you, I would stop that 3 months ago just in case, because I don't know what's going to happen here. But so those are my comments, I think, for the board to, and then we'll take public
I have one
comment.
other question. So this isn't like a homeowner that hired you guys to build this house for them. This is a lot that your company bought and now you're developing it and you're going to sell the house?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board before we hear public comment? And you can always ask questions after as well. So this is,
No, I'm just, again, I've gone through all this and the variances, significantly deviate from the zoning codes here and, might be setting an undesirable precedent, and just thinking about that.
yeah, I do hear you. I don't think it's necessarily a precedent setting thing, because I think I don't know about that. I don't know if I would be concerned as much with the precedent. And it's one of those things. It's not from a building code issue, which, you have certain fire separation setbacks. And if I think it's over 5 feet, then you've got 10 feet between the two. I don't think that you're running into one of those issues where you've got a fire issue. I think it is a zoning issue. It's our city and the aesthetics that we want in our overall development.
If I may, and we don't want to, tell on anyone or whatever, but on our street alone, there's other houses that maybe were built before this code was enacted that don't comply with the height regulations or the setback regulations. So it would fit in aesthetically it wouldn't stick out, is what I'm saying.
And I don't disagree with you. I mean,
Yeah.
houses in my neighborhood that have no setback and that have taller walls. So
Right.
and literally they're built on the property line. So I understand that we have a lot of non-conforming, but just because we have non-conforming properties doesn't mean we want to continue
I
building
hear you.
non-conforming properties. Okay. We may have a couple other questions for you, but
Okay.
I think we should hear from the public.
Thank you.
We've got quite a few faces in here, unless everybody's here for the next agenda item. Is there anyone here for public comment on this item? Excellent, sir. Why don't you come on up, and I think you're the only one. If you'd like to come up to the podium and
Good evening. My name is Glenn Bear, 1711 North Lakeside, across the street from this property. And a retired construction superintendent who dealt with a lot of form board surveys over the years. It's inconceivable to me how this could happen. I also question the amount of building that's on that property. It's a very large structure, large property, and I don't know the regs, but to me, it already seems too big per the property size. It doesn't affect my life a whole lot, to be honest, but that's a big error. And I wouldn't want to be in the surveyor's shoes if that's what really happened. Hard telling. I don't think we got a clear explanation on that. At least I didn't understand it to be clear. And that's my comment.
okay.
You guys can do what you have to do. But I don't feel the city's liable in any way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we comment on the size? No,
I-
it may not.
No, and that's not something that's coming before us right now. Okay, not seeing any other public comment.
You don't see any Zoom. Anyone wanting to join?
Any comments on Zoom? No. Okay, yeah, that's just once. Okay. So we're gonna close public comment at this time and then board discussion. And you can feel free to ask more questions of staff or applicant. I'm really torn on this one. I'm on the fence. I mean, the honest truth is I do feel like in some cases, and this is, personal kind of belief, I think that some of our setback stuff, when you get to bigger lots and you get to bigger setbacks, doesn't always make sense to me. Like there's a lot of communities where 5 foot, and I know that's not where, but I don't think aesthetically when you go through properties, there's a lot that have that. That's not the condition for variance. We got training and variances recently. So hardship would definitely be hardship, but hardship is not typically, my understanding is hardship is not something that you create on your own. If you do it yourself, that's, like if you have a building and all of a sudden something happens and now there's a hardship, but if you did something wrong, but also like, I find things like this to be wasteful in general. If we tell them that you've got to tear down the building and start over, there's going to be an insurance claim. There's going to be, and I know that's not, I keep going back to that. I know we're not supposed to, and I've said it myself and I'm still doing, but, so I'm kind of torn on this one, guys. So, what do you think? Any advice from, staff and the city attorney?
Another quick question. So what were the discussions between staff and the applicant? Was there any give and take in anything or not?
No, it was really after they reached out to us. It was a bit strange. We were like, you need a variance. We were trying to figure out if there was any other way around besides chopping a portion of it off or coming to the variance, but we couldn't find anything. And we discussed it with multiple team members trying to put our heads together to figure out a different pathway, but it seems that the variance is the only pathway to reduce it.
Thank you.
So you all have in your packet, and you have heard staff's presentation does not support the variance request. If you all want to approve the variance request, you have to put on the record the competent substantial evidence that you would be relying on to justify the approval and show how the project meets the variance request criteria, all 4 areas.
Yeah, I'm reading through the specific requirements to approve a variance again here, just really quick.
I like when we do your thing when we go through each of the 4 and see if we can agree or disagree.
Yeah, so I guess okay, so if we're looking at condition 1, special circumstance or condition exists which are peculiar to the land or building for which the variance is sought and do not apply generally to nearby lands and buildings, and that is not the result of action of the applicant. So in this case, the action of the applicant is is inaction or mistake considered an action. So definitely I would say that as it stands right now, there's something unique about this, which is that it's new construction that doesn't meet the variance, and that's fairly unique for this to happen. But was it the result of an action of the applicant? And I don't know, technically they are the GC, they are responsible, but they didn't do this intentionally. This wasn't something that they acted upon and chose to do. So sorry, I'm just reading. Can you help me understand it better?
The criteria is that it must not be an action of the applicant. It does not say that it must not be a willful action of the applicant.
So if it was an action of the surveyor, that wouldn't be that would still be considered an action of the applicant?
Are you asking my opinion?
Yes, please.
Then
And
yes,
it would still be the action of the applicant if the surveyor, because they work for the applicant.
in my opinion.
Okay.
But the staff did indicate there was no, if I heard you right, there was no unique hardship existing. Is that correct?
Right, there's no unique hardship with the lot, their land,
Right.
that would prevent them from being able to meet this requirement.
Remember, with variances, it's the goal of all code is that you meet the code when you can. And the variance process was designed for properties that could not, despite their best efforts, meet the code. And that's why the criteria read the way that they do. So if you can meet the code, you're required to meet the code. And if for some reason your lot is the weirdest shape possible and you just cannot, no matter what you do, meet the code, then that's what the variance is there to provide you some relief. So you can get as close as possible.
Based on variance.
So yeah, so one, I think if we consider that to be, it says very clearly the requirement is that it's not the result of the action of the applicant. And all else I would follow the city attorney's interpretation of it. And so that one, I don't think, no matter the rest. Number two, a strict application of the provision of LDR would deprive the applicant of reasonable use of the land or building. So at this point, there is a building. And our strict interpretation is going to require that building to be, so I would say yes to the second one, even though staff, I think, said no, that one doesn't have that specific caveat in there, but we have to meet all four conditions. And so the proposed variance is the minimum variance, that makes reasonable use of the land, because it says or building. And at this point in time that it's coming before us, the building is existing. This variance would be required in order to make reasonable use of that building. Because otherwise, I don't think chopping the building in half is reasonable, but I don't think it meets condition one. So in my interpretation, I don't think that we can pass a variance because it has to meet condition one, and condition one specifically says that it can't be. Now, they still have a right to appeal this to the commission if they wanted to, right? Circuit court would be their option. Okay.
Well, I can make my motion if you can either vote or not vote.
Yep, that's what it works in.
I move to disapprove PZB project number 25-015-00005 for two variances request for 1708 North Lakeside Drive to encroach into the side setback and to extend the maximum wall height and side setback. The project does not meet the variance criteria based on the data and analysis in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Sorry, I know that's a difficult one and not the outcome you are hoping for, and I understand it, but
But I still have no choice.
okay. Condition or item number D. PZB project number 25-015-00003, consideration of a variance request for 1918 Notre Dame Drive to exceed the maximum allowable front yard impermeable coverage. The subject site is zoned single family residential and has a future land use designation of SFR. We've got
Not
staff
yet.
first. No problem. No problem.
They're trying to get online, they haven't got a link. So that's. They're watching on YouTube, but they can't, I guess they can't participate and fill out the thing.
They requested one.
They did, yeah, they filled it out. She did it again just now, Dan. There's two of them, Juliana, that can drive.
What would be that surveyor? I'm just wondering if sometimes these people do their own surveying, these land development.
No, that one, you have to hire a licensed surveyor to go out.
No, but it's a surveyor that's in their company. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but that's,
With
small builders wouldn't.
Okay.
No, like, I know that builder at hand, and like, looking at them,
Okay,
no way.
but some builders do have their own surveying.
But the issue is whether at some point when they had the surveyor do what they're referring to, so before you build, you give them your site plan, because that's what they're gonna serve, and they gave them the wrong one.
Right.
They sent them a
See,
plan.
when I was an
Now, did they
engineer,
do that in?
we only used signed sealed surveys. We didn't ever use anything.
Oh, where was
But
that?
But they
No,
had a
my own
signed
company.
sealed.
Oh,
But
really?
we've had it for 25
They
years.
had a signed sealed survey, but the signed sealed survey showed a building on it that was based on an architect plan. They sent the surveyor the wrong plan. They sent the surveyor a plan where they put it in as an eight foot. And then that comes back to you, and you have to review it as a builder and say, yes, you got it correct. And they didn't, they missed it. And so they built the whole building in the wrong place.
Well,
And I've heard of that exact same thing happening.
They figured. They think that.
Yeah. But at that point, they were 90% done with the building, and I don't think they should have done that, but that.
See, in New Jersey, we just had to pay them.
What's that? No, they're getting penalized because they built the building in the wrong place. I mean, and they do have insurance. They've got, a general contractor has insurance. You take down the whole building and start over. I've seen that happen before. I've seen people build a house on the wrong lot. They built it on somebody else's property. I've seen two. Okay, and you said that they could view it on YouTube currently, right? Okay. Okay, but I think we could go ahead and have staff start doing their presentation, and then they'll be logged in by the time it becomes your turn to make a presentation, if that works. Great, thank you.
Good evening, Ann Hamilton, Senior Preservation Planner, presenting PCP project number 25-015-00003, which is the consideration for a variance request for 1918 Notre Dame Drive to exceed the maximum allowable front yard and permeable coverage. So here is an aerial of the site. The property is on the east side of Notre Dame Drive, north of Wellesley Drive. Some background of the proposal. This is a 0.42 acre parcel. The home on the parcel was constructed in 1999. And this year, the applicant applied for a permit to repave the existing front drive area. Because the survey was old, there was unpermitted artificial turf and pavers in the rear yard of the structure, and the subject of this variance, they are exceeding the allowable front yard coverage with their existing driveway. The applicant submitted a complete application for a variance to exceed the allowable front yard coverage. So the proposal, you are required
the front 20-foot setback, 75% of that area shall remain pervious and be landscaped, which amounts to 610 square feet maximum of paved area in that setback. The applicant is proposing to repave 1,142 square feet of pavers in the front yard, which would be approximately 50% pervious landscape coverage rather than the required 25%. So here you can see an image of the property. They do have a fairly large circular drive that's paved, and they are asking to repave that. This is the proposed site plan, which would involve paving over the existing driveway. And just a zoomed in view so you can kind of see the portion of that front paved area that is actually in the front yard setback. So it's the majority of it, but there is a small amount of paved area there that is not in the front yard setback. This is the original 1999 site plan that was approved by the city. As you can see, that driveway was part of the original permit approval. So it is considered a legal nonconformity at the current time. However, because the applicant proposes to remove and repave it, they, under the nonconformity section of the code, are required to meet today's code, which went into effect in 2013. So the findings for approval: special circumstances or conditions exist which are peculiar to the land or building for which the variance is sought and do not apply to nearby lands and buildings and is not the result of the action of the applicant. While, again, this pavement is existing currently and was added to the property prior to the current zoning code coming into effect, it is not a result of any peculiarity of the subject land or structure. The structure meets all required setbacks, does not extend into that required landscape area, and the applicant is proposing to remove those pavers. And so they could eliminate most likely the circular driveway and redesign to one entry drive rather than two. They could still feasibly construct a 610 square foot driveway and walkway that would provide access to the 3-car garage. And therefore, this does not meet the criteria. The strict application or the provisions of these LDRs would deprive the applicant of any reasonable use of this land or building. This would not deprive the applicant use of their single-family residence. This is also not the minimum variance, which makes possible the use of the land or building, since this variance request does not preclude the use of the land or building. And the granting the variance will be in accordance with the spirit and purpose of this chapter and will not be unduly injurious to the contiguous property or the surrounding neighborhood, nor otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. The proposed variance is somewhat detrimental to the public welfare, just in the sense that the front yard pervious landscaping requirement is intended to promote green space, reduce heat island effect, and minimize the effects of water runoff onto neighboring properties. Our general goal is to make sure that properties have a good amount of green space in their front yard. That's a requirement for every new build or new construction driveway in the city. And it would result in somewhat detrimental effects to the public welfare. So you can see here a proposed site plan of what the driveway could look like that would allow for access to the 3-car garage, access to the walkway to the front of the home. It would just involve eliminating essentially that second curb cut area and part of the circular driveway. That would get the applicant to about 610 square feet. They could also do tire strips if they desired, but that's just one alternative that we came up with as staff. So since the applicants have not established competent and substantial evidence that the requested variances satisfy the scope of the criteria, staff is recommending that the Planning and Zoning Board deny the proposed variance based on the data and analysis in the staff report. And as of publication, we have received one public comment in support of this application. And these are the proposed motions. Thank you.
Again, can you take it back to the graphic?
Any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? Okay.
I got,
Are we on?
what was the total that they're over on?
So they're proposing 1,142 square feet and they're allowed 610. So about 50% or 25% over.
Okay, could they use permeable pavers or not?
So that's something that they could use to essentially bring down their overall impermeable coverage for the whole lot, but not for the front yard landscaping area because that requires 75% of it to be landscaped. So, you know, while pervious pavers are always good, it doesn't add any more landscape area. So it doesn't really offer them any additional benefits in this case.
Okay.
Okay, let's hear from the applicant. So I think our gentleman, we probably need them to swear them. We need them to swear in. So.
Juliana, can you turn on your video and your audio so we can swear you in?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. Can you give us some video now too as well?
Yes, give me just one second. Hi.
Beautiful. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say yes.
Yes, I swear.
And then just give us your name and your address and your company.
Juliana Vanegas. I'm representing Deccan Drive. Our address is 4020 Thor Drive, Boynton Beach, FL 33426.
Okay, welcome. Staff is a presentation. Ready to hear any remarks that you have with regards to their presentation. Did you hear me? This is the.
No, what was that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
So the staff has made their presentation and you as the applicant now have an opportunity to make a presentation as well. So we'd like to give you that opportunity now.
Okay, yes. So we are applying with the contractor for doing the paver driveway for the homeowner, Jay Sussman. We applied to just replace the same footprint that he currently has on his driveway. So we got the rejection because we are like beyond the maximum allowed impervious area for the front yard. But we present evidence that the house was built like that prior, that it was permitted before like 2000. So we just want to be able to install the driveway for the homeowner as it is right now. The only thing we're doing is that we're replacing the material that he has there for concrete pavers.
Okay. I think we understand what you're asking for. I don't think there's anything really complicated about the request. It's just with regards to the code. So somebody else joined on the Zoom call. Is that somebody that's with?
Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Stephen Pappas. I'm with Deccan Drive. I run our production department, so I just wanted to join as well.
Okay.
Could you turn on your video and your audio? I need to swear you in as well.
Okay, no problem. Just give me one moment, guys. Okay, can everyone see me?
Yes, thank you. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and your address and the company you're with.
My name is Stephen Pappas. I live at 408 Belmont Place in Boynton Beach, and I'm with Deccan Drive.
Okay, thank you. And do you have any, we've just heard from the company, and I think, did you have anything that you specifically wanted to add, or you're just?
No, nothing to necessarily add at the moment. I'm sure Juliana, and I apologize for joining late, everyone, but no, just I'm sure Juliana explained the situation well. I'm just here to offer any input if there's any other questions that came up.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question to the city. Could they leave the driveway like it is and permit their work around that with not doing anything to the existing driveway, and that would be approved or not?
Like in the sense of paving over the existing
No,
driveway?
you're
or-
saying the existing driveway they have now is permitted and it's approved.
Mhm.
Could they just work around that and leave that alone and not touch it?
I mean, yes, they could leave it alone and not touch it, and it would be considered a legal nonconformity, but they couldn't add any additional paving, or anything like that.
So this isn't necessarily tied to a large scale. They just, their driveway is older. They want to refresh it. They want to repave their driveway. That's essentially.
I believe so.
Sir,
yeah,
Can I speak?
absolutely. But you got to come up to the podium so that you're recorded on the
Absolutely,
mic.
yeah. So I'm the homeowner, Jay Sussman. What I'm looking to do is replace exactly what's there right now with the same pavers. Just a different color. They're pink. I want to use gray. The other problem is a lot of them are cracked. There's a lot of roots that were under the driveway from the big giant tree out front. So all I want to do is replace exactly the existing footprint that I have with exactly the same thing, just a different color, and get rid of the root problem, level everything out. I brought my neighbor here who lives across the street. My other neighbor that lives across the street beside him sent in a comment, supporting all the neighbors support it. That's what I'm looking to do. The one thing I do want to mention is the graphic that the city put up there, the one that they're proposing, where the half the driveway is gone, and there's a little path. The big trouble with that driveway is the driveway's on there's a huge slant. Like when I park my cars, they're literally like about a 30 or 40 degree angle. So you cannot walk. The circular driveway I use when my 80-year-old father comes to visit me, I have to pull up like that so he can walk into the house. You can't walk up the driveway. Like my little daughter has a problem. Older people have a problem because it's on such a slant. That was built that way originally because the property would be built up, obviously, for flooding problems. So that's what I'm looking to do, is replace exactly what I have right now.
So I think I understand the situation
Yeah, I
pretty
understand.
well. It's not I've got a few comments on it. One is, this is something that is going to come before this board quite a bit and already has. And I personally believe that there is a process that has to happen in the city where I think that over the years, like this particular change probably occurred into our code in about 2013. So that was when we took away the 700. That was when we took away the 750 square feet part of it, right?
That's when they added the requirement for front yard impervious surface, yeah.
Okay, so at one point, probably around 2013, I was applying for a house and the code said front yard required 75% landscape or 750 square feet minimum, or maybe it was 900 square feet, but there was an alternative definition where there was a minimum square foot. And so on a property of this size, because it's wide, they would have met the minimum square footage, which it was the lesser of two. That option was eliminated from the code somewhere around that time frame, might have even been a little bit later, but
That's more recently, yeah, I don't have the exact.
So that was more recent. So we're only talking about something that changed in the last 6 or 7 years, that what was previously legal is now not legal. There have been over the years many of those changes, and we now, from my observations, probably have 50% of the homes in our city are non-conforming. And that's not a joke. I think about 50% of the homes in this city are non-conforming to the current code. So whether they have a fence that's now not in the proper setback or has the wrong height to it, whether they have a setback that doesn't meet the current setbacks, whether they have equipment in a setback, we have a massive amount of homes that are non-conforming. And when people try to improve their homes, they run up against this issue. In this case, I don't see any way under our charge that we have that we're able to approve a variance for this. It's just the way it's set up. But I do have a recommendation. My understanding, and if staff can clarify, is if they were replacing less than 50% of the driveway, they would be allowed to do that, right? Because my understanding is if you're doing a repair to something and it doesn't exceed 50% of the value, you don't have to bring it up to the current code.
Not necessarily with a driveway. So, in a case like this, if they were, say, proposing to replace 25% of it, this is still non-conforming. So if part of that repair, they would be removing part of the non-conformity and making it smaller, we wouldn't want them to put it back and make it, as non-conforming as it was. The general goal.
They're allowed under the code. They're allowed to under the code. If I have a structure that's non-conforming, if I'm not increasing I don't think it says you have to reduce the non-conforming. It says you cannot increase the non-conforming. You're allowed to repair it and keep it exactly as is my understanding under the code.
That would be something like, if you were repairing a structure that had non-conforming setbacks, and we wouldn't require you to make it meet current setbacks, but something like this where
If you have 20 pavers that are cracked out of 1,000 square feet and you want to replace 20 pavers, how would that not fall into the same?
Well, that would be a repair, that would be non-conforming. Once they would be removing substantial part of the drive, if they were to say remove a chunk of the driveway, not pull out individual pavers and replace them because they're cracked, something more like, oh, we're removing this and replacing it, that becomes more than a repair, that is a replacement. So I think that's the distinction there. What you're describing would be, repairing specific cracked bricks. As opposed to here, they're removing the driveway wholesale, essentially making a blank slate that they then can replace it in a way that meets current code.
What they have proposed to you is that, and I agree. I think that what I'm going to recommend is I don't think that we can approve this variance, but I think that this is a large problem throughout the city, and it is unfortunate because you have beautiful properties that make sense in a lot of areas, and our code has in some ways become very restrictive. And maybe, we have a lot, like the area in College Park where this is very different from South J Street where you have 25-foot lots. They've got a much larger lot with a narrower lot. It's a different lot format. There's a lot of things different about it. And our code doesn't really envision that right now. So I think that we do need to look at some of these nonconformities as part of the cycle of changes that we make and try to reduce it, because I think I'm hearing over and over again from our neighbors that it is a very large burden on people in this city, that everyone's property is non-conforming and everyone is running into code issues when they try to do minor improvements to their home. And that is a difficult burden to put on the citizens of the city. So I think but that's not what the variance process is for. So I was trying to give them, and I believe I kind of disagree with you on the construction. So when you're saying replacing, you're not replacing a driveway. If you were to cut out a chunk of concrete and re-pour it, that's going to be a repair. And with pavers, if you have an area where the tree roots, like the city is doing paver repairs because of tree roots right in the city for ADA issues. And that's repairs, that's repair work. This would be also, I believe, repair work. And my understanding is if they went in for a permit for a driveway repair that did not exceed a percentage, which I believe under the code is 50%, that they would then be allowed to get that. And if they were not increasing the variance, that you would be able to approve that from a permitting perspective. That's my understanding. And I think they've got a very good argument to fight that without requiring a variance at all. So I don't know what and I think if you could give them, obviously we want to help our neighbors. If you disagree with that, let them know. But I think that's your angle on this. I don't think we're under the current law that we have as a code. We're not allowed to approve this variance. We can only do it for specific reasons. And the fact that the code was changed to make what you have no longer legal is, initially the argument would be 7 years ago when they were changing the code, there should have been more people aware of those code changes than in here saying, hang on a second, you're making my house illegal. That doesn't really happen in Lake Worth because people aren't aware enough of these code changes when they happen. So that's my advice to you would be to pursue.
Is there a grandfather clause, like something like that?
The grandfather clause means what you have is allowed and you're allowed to repair it, but you're not allowed to take it down and redo it. So the question is, how much are you allowed to repair and stay under that? And that's where I think you have to have some further conversations with staff on.
Because my understanding when we had a conversation was,
sorry, you got to speak on them.
Sorry. Yeah, my understanding is I thought when we had a conversation with staff, and maybe I'm wrong, but someone told me if you replace one paver, then you're in violation.
They may have said that. I don't believe that's true. And I think you got to just pursue that a little bit more with them, because I believe that you are allowed to repair under the code. But what is a repair? Because with a paver, you don't repair a paver by gluing it back together. You repair it by removing a section. And especially like if you have a long driveway and there's a tree root and now you have a big bump, a repair is taking out a 2 feet wide by 10-foot area, cutting the root down, fixing the gravel underneath and putting pavers back. That is a repair. That's not a replacement of the driveway. So I think you've got some. But you've got to reduce the scope. You're going to have to use your contractor to help you identify specifically the areas. You're not going to be able to do a wholesale color change on it. but if you want to replace it with a similar color that matches, or even just remove the same brick, cut out the root, grind down whatever you have to do the earthwork, put it back, something that would qualify under the code as a repair would still potentially be grandfathered. But again, you got to work with staff, but we don't have the ability to provide a variance to a code that's been changed. We don't want to piecemeal just say, the code has been changed, whether it should have or not is not our position, but that's my.
Yeah, just real quick, what don't you like about what the city proposed for you?
I don't believe if you put that graphic back up there, did you please, the second one that you proposed? That one. So if you look at that, you see the yellow area that connects the
parking lot to the front door.
Yeah, that little skinny little yellow area, that's not even wide enough to walk on. So if I have to put some, like if I park the car in the driveway, like they're proposing getting that green area is existing pavers, getting rid of that. So all I would have is the yellow. If I park a car there, I haven't got room for a wheelchair to roll it right in, up the front door. Right now, what I do is I drive the car up where the green area is, the vertical green area. I park the car there, and then my dad can get out and we can walk him right into the house like that way. And keep in mind, there's a big elevation right in that driveway. If you had a picture of the driveway, you'll see the driveway from the side is literally like the cars are parked. Yeah, you can kind of see it in that picture. You're taking across the street, but if you're at the side, those cars are like this. So when you get out of the car, you got it's 8 feet higher. My house is 8 feet higher than the street. So the problem is like right there, you can say I pull up on the right side, park in front of the house, and then walk right in. What they're proposing is there's not even enough room. That's already narrow where the circular driveway is, behind that big tree there. That big tree is the culprit. It's giving me roots on both sides. I also have roots from the big tree on the left, the mahogany tree on the left goes under the driveway where the black car is there. That's the problem.
And just to be clear, that's an example. That's not a, requirement. It's just a suggestion of a way that you could, meet your paving requirements. You could certainly keep the other section of the driveway. Might be more problematic because then you'd be losing access to your 3-car garage.
Right.
But, in a sense, I think it requires getting creative and, designing something that does meet the current requirements of the code while still giving you access to the areas that you're looking for.
I think the bottom line here is just in terms of, you heard with the previous item that was before us, we have to meet very specific criteria to be able to approve a variance. And unfortunately, this doesn't really meet those specific criteria. So this is the wrong process to do that. I think that my opinion is I do think we need to look at our code and make some changes there. I think we have too much non-conforming property in our city, but that's a separate item. So if there's any other comments from the public, we did read one, right? There's one.
I do have one, and it was a letter of support from a neighbor, Jonathan Nichols, 3 Auburn Drive. Said he's across the street from 1918 Notre Dame Drive. And the purpose of the comment is to support Jay Sussman's request for a variance to exceed the maximum front yard impermeable coverage and to replace the existing driveway and all walkways.
Okay. Gentlemen, are you ready to make a motion? You can make any motion you want. It may not get seconded, it may not get approved, but you're allowed to make any motion you want.
Well, I'll make a motion, but I just want to add to what you were saying, and what should be changed maybe, and everything you said makes sense, but it leaves us with what we have to do tonight, and that's with the variance. And for that reason, I have to move to disapprove the PZB project number 25-015-00003 for a variance to exceed the maximum allowable front yard impermeable coverage for the property at 1918 Notre Dame Drive. The project does not meet the variance criteria based on the data and endless in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay. But again, I do recommend you speak to the city about a repair. Okay, so we are finished with our 4 items of new business planning issues.
I never know if these should be planning issues or department reports, but we've got 2 things tonight. One, we had the summer round of LDRs that came before you all. A quick update on that.
His phone is charging over there.
He's got it. So that'll be going to the city commission on the 16th, I believe, for the first reading.
Sorry, there was some noise.
You're good. You're good. So summer LDRs that went to you all last month, I guess. Those are slated to go to city commission for first reading on the 16th. We had in the most recent legislative session, Senate Bill 180. It limits municipalities from implementing any changes to land development regulations that could be more burdensome or restrictive for development until October of 2027. So in alignment with that, we have had to remove the proposed changes to the parking reduction. So that's going to stay at 25%. Changing that reduction to be 15 instead of 25 would be considered more burdensome. People would have to provide more parking for development. So we are not going to be pulling that forward. So I wanted to let you all know about that so that it's not a surprise when it goes to the city commission and you're like, wait a minute, that's not what we voted on. So we also had to pull out one other change about which zoning districts generators are integral generators are prohibited. So that's staying at the same 2 zoning districts that it's currently at. So had to make a couple last minute changes for that.
So one of the recommendations that we had made with regards to the parking specifically was with regards to the kind of the definition of mixed use, which was one of the ways to achieve the 25% reduction, and that there was very de minimis mixed use being proposed in order to qualify for obscene parking reductions. Is there anything under the code to further define what mixed use means? Because literally, if someone just walks in and says, I'm going to put in a 10 by 10 storage unit, does that qualify them to now have a commercial storage unit and get 25% reduction on 500 apartments?
So as it stands right now, we don't have a definition clarifying the minimum use area for a second or third or whatever use in a mixed use development. And we aren't going to be able to put one in. However, our code does state in the rules of construction for the LDRs that where we don't have a definition or don't have something clarified, you go to the dictionary for it. So William kind of was in that vein. He did research into planners dictionaries and comparables, and generally the minimum is 10% use area. So if you've got your main use is residential and you want to do a secondary use of retail to be mixed use, your second use should be at least 10% of the use area of the principal use. So until 10/1/2027, that's what we'll be working with.
Okay, so you believe that you're going to require them to have 10% mixed use to get the 25% reduction for mixed use?
Correct.
I think that will work because I think that your parking requirement for if 10% of your area is retail has a higher parking load than residential would for the same area. I think you're like 1 in 500 or 1 in
or 4 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so you would at least have some more parking. So if they're putting 10%, that's a legitimate mixed use as opposed to some of the things that I've seen proposed.
Yeah, not putting a telephone box there.
Or
And
what was the one that I remember seeing was 2 shared. He took 2 apartments and converted them to a WeWork type space and took a big reduction for that. So
yeah.
Okay.
So a heads up on that one. And then more of a board planning. We are looking to potentially have a special meeting third week of October. We have a big item coming back, the Sunset property. We're looking to schedule that at some point. But just with scheduling things, the first week of October is not really looking realistic. So we wanted to put that all out to you guys who are here tonight. We'll also be obviously checking with Juan on his availability, but take a look at your calendars, see if we can make quorum for October 15th. If not, we will take a look at whatever is the next available date that we can meet quorum for them.
The third Wednesday?
That would be the third Wednesday, yes.
And are we having a second meeting in September?
We are not going to have a second meeting in September. Yeah, we no longer have the need for that. Plus, Scott, Karina, and I will be out of town that week. We are going to the Florida American Planning Association conference.
See, the 15th of October. So
correct.
I'm available for the 15th. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is all we have for planning issues and department reports.
The second Wednesday would not be available. I have cataract surgery that day.
Gotcha. The third Wednesday?
The third Wednesday, the 15th.
The 15th.
Okay.
Yeah. Did I say second? I meant the 15th.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no more planning issues or department reports. Any board member comments?
I could come with one eye closed, so maybe I have a patch.
So guys, as a board member comment, I'm probably what came up here tonight. I'm probably going to kind of push more. I'll discuss with you guys, but I do the next time that this comes before, I do really, from what I'm gathering, I would, as part of this board, I know we don't have, that's not specifically our purview, but we have talked about this before, that we can make general recommendations on cleanup. And I do think that over the years, we've made a lot of changes to the code that have made a lot of properties non-conforming, and some of them very much make sense. Like I think the setback of the fence from a corner lot will require that makes sense. Some of the stuff that we've done in front yards, I feel is a little more stringent. I'm not a big fan of the parking strips as a solution. And I think the parking strips end up looking cheap and worse, and they end up, when the weeds grow in, they don't. So there's certain things that we've made in the code that we're kind of pushing people towards that I think we should kind of rethink. And the guidelines for rethinking that, in my mind, are a directive or an intention of reducing nonconformities within our city. So if we see that 70% of the houses have this thing in common and it's now illegal, or 70% of the non-conforming issues is this one issue, and we look at it and we're like, hey, that's part of the character of our city. Why did we make that illegal? Maybe we can back off on some of that. I think it'll lessen the load on you all and lessen the burden on some of the citizens, because sometimes we don't realize how many properties have a non-conforming issue when we make it non-conforming. So, okay, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.